The phone rang at 2047 in the morning. I know because I looked at the clock before I picked it up, and the red numbers burned themselves into my memory the way certain things do when your life is about to change. My granddaughter was on the other end. She wasn't crying. That was the part that scared me most. When my granddaughter cries, she sounds like a small bird. This time she sounded like someone reading a hostage note. Grandma. I'm at a precinct in Brookline. They booked me for grand larceny. Dad said I took the bracelets. My stepmother told the officer she watched me do it. I used my phone call on you because I don't know who else to call. I sat up. The dog raised her head, then put it back down. I have a black and taunt dachshund named Pretzel, and she has slept through every important moment of the last 8 years of my life. Sweetheart, are you hurt? No. Have you said anything to them? I said I want a lawyer. That's all. Good. You sit there and you don't say one more word. Not your name spelled out, not what you had for dinner, nothing. I'm coming. I hung up. I put on the slacks I had folded over the back of the chair the night before, and the cashmere cardigan I kept on the hook by the door. I have learned, after 67 years on this earth, that when you are about to walk into a room where someone wants to underestimate you, you let them. You wear the cardigan. You carry the handbag with the soft leather that has gone a little dull at the corners. You let your hair stay the silver it became somewhere around 58, and you don't put on more lipstick than a Sunday school teacher would wear to a potluck. I drove from Newton into Brookline with the radio off. The streets were empty in that particular way that streets get empty between the hours of 3 and 4 in the morning, when even the people who never sleep have finally given up. While I drove, I thought about my son. My son is 41 years old. He has my late husband's jawline and my mother's stubborn streak, and, somewhere along the line, he picked up an idea that I have never been able to talk him out of, which is that the world owes him something specific and that the people who love him are the ones standing between him and it. He lost his first wife 11 years ago, to a brain aneurysm at 33. She was the mother of my granddaughter. She was a kindergarten teacher with hands that always smelled like crayons and clementines, and when she died, my son fell apart in a way I understood and forgave. He drank. He stopped working. He left my granddaughter, who was 8, in our house for the better part of 2 years. My husband and I raised her through 4th and 5th grade. We took her to ballet. We washed her hair on Sunday nights and braided it before church. She called us her parents for a while, and then one day she stopped, and we never asked her to start again. Then my son met my daughter-in-law. I will call her my daughter-in-law because that is what she is, technically, though the words taste like aluminum in my mouth. She is 34 years old. She came into my son's life when my granddaughter was 11. She had a smile that was all teeth and no eyes, and from the first dinner she ever ate at my table, I watched her cataloging the silverware. She made my son believe he was a victim. She told him his mother had stolen his daughter from him during his grief, which is a clever lie, because all good lies have a thread of truth in them. We had taken his daughter. He had been grateful. Now suddenly, in this new woman's hands, gratitude turned into resentment, and resentment turned into a story he started telling himself over and over until he believed it. My granddaughter went back to live with them when she was 12. It nearly killed me, but I had no legal standing, and my son was sober by then, and a child should be with her father. I drove on. There was something my son did not know, and something my daughter-in-law did not know, and it was the reason I was not panicking the way a grandmother in my position might be expected to panic. When my granddaughter was 3 years old, her other grandmother, my late husband's mother, set up a trust for her. My mother-in-law was a difficult woman who I did not always get along with, but she loved that little girl, and she had been wealthy in the quiet New England way, where you don't talk about it and you don't spend it, and the only thing you do with it is make sure it lasts for the next generation. When she passed, she left 2 trusts, one for my son, which he received outright at 35, and which is, as best I can tell, almost entirely gone, and one for my granddaughter, which is currently held in a structure that he doesn't fully understand. I am the trustee, not him, not his wife, me. And the trust contains provision that my mother-in-law and I worked on together in the last 6 months of her life, over many afternoons at her kitchen table while she ate soft-boiled eggs and refused chemotherapy. The provision was inserted at her insistence. It was inserted because she had watched my son for 35 years, and she had seen, even before I had let myself see, what he was capable of when he wanted something. The provision says that if any party with a familial relationship to the beneficiary attempts, through any legal or coercive action, to challenge the trustee, alter the terms, access the principal early, or harm the standing of the beneficiary in any material way, including by criminal accusation, the trust accelerates. The beneficiary receives full control of the principal immediately, regardless of age, and any party found to have initiated the challenge is named explicitly in the trust documents as a disqualified person, forever barred from any benefit, direct or indirect. My granddaughter is 19 years old. The principal is sitting at just over $2 million. My son does not know any of this. He believes the trust pays out at 25 in installments, and that there is some discretionary component I control. That is what we let him believe. That is what my mother-in-law and I agreed, while she was dying, would be the safest thing for the child. I parked across from the precinct. I sat in the car for one long minute with my hands on the wheel. I thought about my late husband, and I thought about my mother-in-law, and I thought about the kindergarten teacher with the crayon hands. I thought about the 11-year-old girl who had eaten cereal at my counter every morning for 2 years, and I made a promise to all of them, and then I got out of the car. The desk sergeant was a heavy-set man with kind eyes who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. I told him my name. I told him I was there for my granddaughter. I told him I had retained counsel, and I gave him the name of my lawyer, who I called from the car at a red light. My lawyer is 69 years old, has the disposition of a snapping turtle, and answered on the second ring, even though it was almost 4 in the morning, because he has been my lawyer for 31 years, and he knows that I do not call at 4 in the morning unless someone has done something they will eventually regret. The sergeant brought my granddaughter out about 20 minutes later. She is a tall girl. She has her mother's auburn hair and my husband's gray eyes. She was wearing leggings and a Boston University sweatshirt, and there was a smear of mascara under her left eye where she had cried at some earlier point and then made herself stop. She didn't run to me. She walked, deliberately, the way she walked across the stage at her high school graduation, and she put her face into my shoulder, and she stood there for a long time without making a sound. "You came," she said into my cardigan. "Of course I came. They're saying I took her bracelets. 3 of them. The Cartier ones. They said the security cameras at the house caught me. They said I put them in my bag and walked out yesterday afternoon." "Did you, Grandma?" "I have to ask, sweetheart, not because I think you did, because the layer is going to ask, and I want to hear it from you first." She looked up at me. Her gray eyes were dry now. "I have never touched those bracelets. I don't like those bracelets. She wears them every single day, and she sniffs at me every time I walk past her, and I would not touch her things if she paid me to." All right, that's what I needed. My lawyer arrived at the precinct at 4:30. He wears a navy suit that has seen the inside of more courtrooms than most lawyers see in a career, and he carries a leather portfolio that I am almost certain has the same yellow legal pad in it that it had in 1996. He spoke to the desk sergeant in a low voice. He spoke to the arresting officer. He spoke to my granddaughter, alone in a small room with a metal table, for 40 minutes. When he came out, he sat down next to me on the wooden bench. They have her on camera, allegedly. Entering her father's bedroom yesterday at 1:14 in the afternoon, the bracelets were discovered missing at 6. Her stepmother claims she watched the footage and identified your granddaughter. And your granddaughter says she was at the library. She has her student ID swipe, and she has a friend who was studying with her. She has receipts from the coffee shop. She has a time-stamped photograph she sent her roommate at 1:20 showing the book she was reading. So the camera footage is fabricated, or doctored, or somebody else in similar clothing. Or it doesn't exist at all and the stepmother lied to the officers. We won't know until we see it. What's the charge? Larceny over $1,200. It's a felony in the state. Bail will be set in the morning. I've already filed the motion. I sat with that for a moment. "Walter," I said, "I need you to do 2 things for me. Tell me. First, I want you to file a formal protective petition with the trust administrator. Today, before noon. Cite the accusatory language clause. I want it on record that as of this morning, a parent has initiated criminal proceedings against the beneficiary." He looked at me. He has known me for 31 years, and there are very few things I can do that will surprise him anymore. But I watched something move across his face. "You're invoking the acceleration." "I'm invoking the acceleration." "You understand what that means?" "I understand exactly what it means. He'll be disqualified, permanently, from everything related to that estate, including the residual that flows back to him on her death if she predeceases without issue." "I understand." "And his wife. Anyone found to have participated in the initiation." "Her too," Walter nodded. He wrote something on the yellow pad. "Second thing. I want you to send a copy of the petition and a summary of the relevant provision to my son, by courier, to his home, with a note for me." "What does the note say?" I thought about it. I thought about my mother-in-law at her kitchen table, eating soft-boiled eggs with a hand that was already starting to tremble. I thought about what she would say. The note says, "You should have asked me about the trust before you made this phone call." Walter wrote it down. My granddaughter was released on her own recognizance at 9:15 that morning. I took her home. Not to her father's home, which had been her home for the last 7 years. To my home. The one with the dachshund and the kitchen where she used to eat cereal at the counter. I made her a piece of toast with apricot jam, and she ate half of it, and then she put her head down on her arms and slept at the kitchen table for 2 hours without moving. I let her sleep. I made coffee. I sat in the den, in the armchair my husband used to sit in, and I waited. My son called at 11:46. I let it ring 4 times before I picked up. "Mother, son, what in God's name have you done?" His voice was the voice of a man who had received a courier delivery sometime in the last 15 minutes. The voice of a man who had read a document he did not understand and then read it again, and then started to. "I have done what I was asked to do by your grandmother 13 years ago before she died. I have followed the terms of a trust that was drafted, executed, and notarized properly. The acceleration clause was triggered by your accusation. I have done nothing except notify the appropriate parties. This is insane. I want to talk to you. In person. Today. You may come to the house at 4 o'clock. Alone. Mother, my wife is coming with me." "No, son, she isn't. If she comes, I won't open the door. If she comes, the next conversation you have about this will be in a deposition room. I am being very clear. You come at 4, alone, or you don't come at all." There was a long pause. "Fine. And one other thing. Drop the charges. Today. Before 5. "I can't do that. My wife filed the police report. It's out of my hands." "It is not out of your hands. It is exactly in your hands. You have until 5 o'clock to call that precinct and inform the detective that you and your wife are no longer cooperating, that you've reviewed the evidence, that you've made a terrible mistake. Then you have the rest of your life to figure out how to live with what you tried to do." "Mother, you don't understand. The bracelets are gone. They were worth almost $40,000. "Find them, son. I suggest you start by looking in your wife's jewelry box." He didn't say anything. I hung up. My granddaughter woke up around 12:30. She came into the den in her socks. She sat down on the rug at my feet, the way she used to when she was little and we read books together before bed, and she leaned her head against my knee. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you know I didn't do it?" I put my hand on her hair. "Because I know you. I have known you since the day you were born. I held you in the hospital while your mother was still being stitched up. I know the shape of your hands, and I know the things you love, and I know that you would no more steal from that woman than you would steal from a stranger on the street. I didn't need to know. I knew." She was quiet for a minute. "Grandma, why does Dad hate me?" I'd been waiting, for 7 years, for her to ask me that question. I practiced different answers in my head while I did the dishes, and while I walked the dog, and while I tried to fall asleep at night. None of the answers were good enough, so I told her the truth. "He doesn't hate you, sweetheart. He hates that you remind him of your mother. He hates that you're a witness to who he was before, and to who he is now. And he can't bear the gap between those two things. So he listens to a woman who tells him you are the problem, because if you are the problem, he doesn't have to look at himself." She didn't cry. She just nodded, slowly, like she was filing it away. "He's coming here at 4, I said. "Will I have to see him?" "Only if you want to. You can stay upstairs. You can leave the house. You can sit right here with me. Whatever you want." She thought about it. "I want to be in the kitchen when he comes in. I don't want to talk to him. I just want him to see me." "All right." My son arrived at 3:58. I watched him get out of his car from the front window. He was alone. He had on a barn jacket I had bought him for Christmas 7 years ago. His hair was uncombed. I let him ring the bell twice before I opened the door. He stood on the porch. He did not come in. "Mother." "Come in, son." He came in. He saw my granddaughter at the kitchen counter doing nothing, just sitting on a stool with her hands wrapped around a mug. He stopped. She did not look up. "Sweetheart," he said. She did not answer. I led him into the den. I shut the doors behind us. I did not offer him coffee or a chair or anything else. He stood by the fireplace. I sat in the armchair. "Mother, I didn't know about the acceleration. I know you didn't. I would not have if I had known. I would not have. You would not have allowed your wife to file a false police report against your daughter if you had known there was money in it for you." "I understand. That is exactly the man I expected you to become, and I am sorry to be right." His face did something complicated. "That isn't fair." "Son, listen to me. You called the police on your child. On the child your wife died giving you. On the child your father and I raised through the worst 2 years of all of our lives, while you drank yourself into a place we weren't sure you would come back from. You called the police on her because your wife told you to. And you did not call me first. You did not ask her if it was true. You sat with the woman in your kitchen and you let her dial the number, and then you got in the car and you drove to the station with her and you watched them put cuffs on your daughter. They didn't cuff her. They booked her. They photographed her. They took her shoelaces. They put her in a holding cell for 4 hours. Don't tell me what they didn't do. He sat down. He hadn't been invited to, but he did. On the edge of the couch, like a man who wasn't sure he would be allowed to stay. Have you dropped the charges? I said. Yes, all of them. Every report, filed and unfiled. Yes, I called from the car on the way over. And your wife. I haven't spoken to her since this morning. Where are the bracelets? He looked at his hands. In her safe. In her safe in your house. Yes. Did she ever lose them? No. Did she know your daughter wasn't in your bedroom yesterday at 1:14? She knew. Did she alter the security footage? I don't know how she would do that. Son, look at me. Did she alter the security footage? I think she had her brother do it. He works in IT. I sat with that. How long had she been planning this? I don't know. You do know. A few months, maybe longer. She had been asking me about the trust, about when it paid out. I didn't know the exact details. I told her what I thought I knew. And she did the math. And she decided that a felony conviction would disqualify your daughter from the inheritance, which would mean the residual flowed somewhere else. To you, she assumed, which meant her. Yes. I let the silence sit there. You are going to lose your wife, son. Either she will leave you when she finds out the trust is gone, or you will leave her because you finally see what she is. I cannot make that decision for you. But I want to tell you something else, and I want you to listen carefully, because it is the last thing I am going to say to you on this subject for a long time. He looked up. Your daughter is 19 years old. She has just been through the worst night of her life because of a woman you brought into her house and a phone call you allowed to be made. She is upstairs right now, or in the kitchen, or wherever she has gone in this house, and she does not want to see you. She may not want to see you for a long time. She may not want to see you ever again. And whatever she decides, I am going to support her. I will not be a bridge between you. I will not pass messages. I will not invite you to Thanksgiving and hope you can work it out over turkey. You did this. You will live with it. He nodded. He was crying, a little, in the controlled way men of his generation cry. I did not feel sorry for him. I felt something more complicated than sorry, which is what mothers feel when their grown children show them, for the 100th time, who they really are. Can I see her before I go? Ask her. Don't tell her. Ask her and accept whatever she says. He stood up. He walked to the kitchen. I followed at a distance. He stood in the doorway. My granddaughter was still on the stool. She had not moved. Sweetheart, he said, can I talk to you for a minute? She looked at him. She looked at him for a long time. Then she shook her head, once, side to side, slowly. Not today, Dad, he nodded. He left. The trust acceleration was completed by Walter and his team over the following 6 weeks. My granddaughter, on her 20th birthday this past September, took possession of just over $2 million in diversified assets. She finished her sophomore year at Boston University with a 3.8. She moved out of the dorms and into a one-bedroom apartment in Ulston, which she chose herself and which she pays for from a monthly distribution that she and I worked out together with a financial advisor. She has not spoken to her father in 14 months. My daughter-in-law was charged, eventually, with filing a false police report and conspiracy. Her brother lost his job. The marriage ended in March. I don't know where she lives now, and I don't care to. My son sent me a letter last spring. It was 4 pages long. It said many things, most of them true, none of them quite enough. I wrote back and I told him that I loved him because I do, and that I forgave him because I am trying to, and that I was not going to see him until his daughter said she was ready. I have not seen him since. There is a kind of mothering you do when your children are small, where you hold their hand against the hot stove and tell them no. And there is a kind of mothering you do when they are grown, where you let them touch the stove and you do not save them, and you sit in the kitchen afterward and you do not say, I told you so. I am 68 years old now, and I have learned that the second kind is harder and lonelier, and that you do it anyway, because the alternative is raising a man who never learns, and a granddaughter who never knows that someone, somewhere, was willing to choose her. My granddaughter sleeps in the guest room on Sunday nights sometimes. She brings her laundry. She eats cereal at the counter, the same brand she ate when she was 11, and Pretzel sits at her feet and waits for the milk at the bottom of the bowl. We don't talk about our father much. We don't have to. The trust is doing its work, which is the work my mother-in-law set in motion at her kitchen table 20-some years ago, when she was dying and she looked across at me and she said, very quietly, "He will try, eventually. We have to make sure she's standing on something he can't take away." I think about her, my mother-in-law, more now than I did when she was alive. I think she would be pleased. I think she would not say so out loud, because she was not that kind of woman. But I think she would have made my granddaughter a soft-boiled egg, and she would have sat across the table from her, and she would have watched her eat it. And that would have been enough. That's the thing about the people who love you properly. They don't always say it. They build something underneath you, while you're not looking, and they spend the rest of their lives making sure the ground holds. I have thought a great deal, in the months since that night in Brookline, about why my son let it happen. Not just the phone call. The years leading up to it. The slow surrender of his own judgment to a woman who told him a more flattering story than the one he had been living. And I have come to believe that nothing in this life arrives without a trail of small choices behind it. Bennett did not become a man who would let Tessa file a false report against his own daughter in a single afternoon. He became that man one swallowed doubt at a time, one unanswered question at a time, one moment of quiet cowardice at a time, stacked across a decade until the cowardice became the shape of him. That is the part I want you to hear. Character is not what you do when the room is watching. It is what you do at the kitchen table at midnight when no one will ever know. My mother-in-law understood that. She sat across from me eating soft-boiled eggs while she was dying, and she did not lecture me, and she did not pray over the trust documents. She used her mind. She looked clearly at her own son and grandson, and she built a structure that could hold a child up if the men in the family failed her. That was not a religious act. It was an act of intelligence married to love, which is the rarest combination I've ever seen in a human being, and the one I have spent the second half of my life trying to imitate. Adeline is not in the clear yet. A girl does not walk out of a holding cell at 4 a.m. and become whole again by sunrise. She has nightmares. She flinches at sirens. She is learning slowly that the man who is supposed to protect her was the one who put her there, and learning that costs something you cannot put a price on. But she is standing. She's in school. She's choosing her own apartment, balancing her own accounts, making her own mistakes in her own name. The money matters, but the money is not the point. The point is that she now knows in her bones that someone saw clearly on her behalf when she could not see for herself. That knowledge will outlast the principle. If there is anything I want a stranger to take from this story, it is that you must build the ground under the people you love before they need it, not after. You must use your mind, not just your heart. You must be willing to be the unpopular one, the difficult one, the woman in the cardigan who does not cry and does not negotiate. Forgiveness is real, and I am working on mine for my son. But forgiveness is not the same as access, and love is not the same as permission. The people who love you properly do not always say it out loud. They put something solid beneath your feet, and they walk away quietly, and they let you stand on it.